Welcome to WCG Talks Trials, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of clinical research, sharing the latest trends, insights, and best practices from experts across the industry. In each episode of WCG Talks Trials, we'll explore a different area of the clinical trial industry, while featuring a diverse range of clinical research and medical professionals. If you're passionate about advancing clinical research, improving patient outcomes, and driving healthcare forward, then WCG Talks Trials is the right podcast for you. We are so glad you could join us today.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to WCG Talks Trials. This episode will focus on increasing complexity of clinical trials. We're going to highlight approaches to sustain site readiness, build research resilience, and also identify opportunities for innovation in an ever-changing ecosystem. My name is Jenna Goeller, your host today, and I am WCG's Associate Director of Clinical Trial Insights and Analytics. Here at WCG, my work is all about the data. I focus on leveraging data from ClinSphere to identify industry trends and also help our clients strategize and accelerate their trials. I'm really excited to be here today, and I'm joined by Trevor Cole. So Trevor, I'll hand it over to you to please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Jenna. It's a pleasure to be here, everyone, and discuss complexity, site resilience, and innovation, all which are very important topics in today's clinical research operations. I want to also thank everyone that's listening in on the call today and taking the time. I'm Trevor Cole, a Program Director of Clinical Solutions and Partnering here at WCG. And in my role, I engage with our sites, our partners, and other study startup experts to deliver solutions and maintain shared governance with a focus on strategy and operational excellence. Jenna, I'm excited to share my experience and perspective today on these topics. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Fantastic. I think we should just dive right in. So for our first question, as we know, clinical trial complexity is really increasing at a rapid pace, from protocol design to technology requirements. What are the biggest impacts on research site capacity, and how would you say that sites are adapting to these changes?
Well, let's just say the struggle is real with complexity. Clinical trial complexity is at an all-time high overall, and we know complexity impacts our capacity of our sites as well. According to our 2025 Site Challenges Report, about 35% of sites are citing that complexity of clinical trials is one of their top challenges. So complexity really isn't just about our protocol design, as we may initially think, but it really spans operational requirements, technology integrations, and even there's a ripple effect of frequent amendments. And since 2015, Phase 3 trials have seen a 42% increase in required procedures and a 37% rise in endpoints overall. Nearly a third of that data, too, is coming from non-core procedures, which is adding burden without really supporting any primary endpoints or value. So we see that trickle-down impacts to our sites, which include resource strain. So we have every additional procedure that's added, every amendment or technology layer, it stretches the site resources, our staffing times, and budgets. We also see operational disruptions. So when we have frequent amendments, as we see with protocols, that also triggers a lot of rework. And so we have revised budgets, contracts, consent, retraining of the team that's working on the study. And then additionally, we have technology overload. So our sites, which are often the primary contact for those tech issues, which we see about 79% of our sites are reporting that. Even if the sponsor has some mechanism to inform the participants to contact a central party, we still see the participants go to the site to ask for technology concerns or questions. So that just adds additional burden as well in that complexity. So really, given all these challenges, we know that our sites are really well at adapting. Really they're at the beginning and the front of study activity. So it brings a need for agility and critical thinking anyway. So they are able to adapt well. And they're taking action by increasing their advocacy for streamlined protocols and early involvement in study design with sponsors. And in fact, we even see 47% of our sites will say that simplifying protocol complexity is vital for operational viability. So it's a critical component. Also, our sites are embedding operational feasibility reviews before finalizing protocols. And that may look a couple different ways depending on the indication and the procedures or special imaging that may be included. And then also leveraging capacity planning tools to avoid that overcommitment. So really truly making sure that they have the resources to successfully deliver the trial. Also, our sites are consistently assessing feasibility. So through protocol changes, they're assessing that feasibility to ensure that those changes in complexity don't mean a change in the ability to successfully deliver that trial and get participants engaged in it. Also, our sites recognize that the importance of collaboration. And so a lot of those sites will have, reciprocal engagement with our sponsors and CROs to really ensure proportionality throughout the trial and also focus on what truly matters for study success. And hopefully that will move the needle, but it truly takes a village in our industry to get there.
That is quite the comprehensive list. And on top of that, since I'm a self-proclaimed data nerd, those results and statistics you shared were staggering. And I think it's really important all of those complexity components you illustrated really lend themselves to those consistent trends that we're seeing within the modern landscape. And it often requires sites to handle frequent protocol amendments. They're just going up year over year across all therapeutic areas, as well as adapting to all of the new technologies that you hit on. So what would you say as far as strategies that can help sites manage these operational burdens while still focusing and maintaining quality?
Yeah, that's a great question, especially in today's landscape with all, as you mentioned, all the protocol amendment changes, complexity. But I think one thing to know really is a key ingredient here is knowing your site's organizational environment and your organization's objectives. If there's one thing that is true, it is that each site has its own uniqueness. Even though, of course, sites share a lot of commonalities, there are still differences in how they operate. So some strategies that maybe we have seen that are successful would be establishing amendment response protocols. So some sites are doing this. So they have a clear process for handling amendments, minimizing any disruptions that may be occurring in their operations, and also ensuring rapid retraining and compliance so that they can execute and deliver those trials. Additionally, we see the advocacy for sponsor transparency. So making sure we're maintaining open communication with our sponsors about any upcoming changes, which really help the site prepare and allocate resources effectively and efficiently. And that was really, we just recently had a protocol amendment session that was open to sites, and a lot of them shared communication as a key critical point here. For prioritizing integrated technology platforms, that is another key area that I think is a solution. What we've seen is sites encouraging sponsors to maybe provide robust technical support. There's also concierge services that some sponsors will provide that are kind of that intermediary and that central participant concierge. And then even when possible, we've also seen sponsors maybe allowing sites to use some of their validated systems. Of course, there's more processes that have to happen due to that. But that is also helping reduce some of that burden around technology overload. We know from previous data out there that there's about 6 or 7 technologies deployed for each study from a site perspective. So that's a lot to manage and juggle. So with that comes resource planning. Complexity, as we mentioned, puts a strain on capacity. So when we see sites are planning for increased people hours and logistical complexity, really they're doing that to balance quality, budget, and timelines. And they're getting better at that with the use of data and some analytics to help hopefully project and predict what kind of capacity is studied.
I'm so happy you highlighted our amendment webinar because we received so much great feedback that's hopefully going to come into play as far as a best practices playbook, and that communication and transparency were really highlighted from our stakeholders. And I also really want to highlight as well your initial points on retraining and compliance, because it really aligns with the concepts gaining traction, such as quality by design and risk management, which I know all of these things you're an expert in. And so how can sites practically apply these principles day to day to mitigate complexity and improve outcomes?
Are your clinical trials stalling due to recruitment hurdles, slow site activation, or unpredictable timelines? Discover WCG Study Accelerator, a powerful solution designed to supercharge your study execution. With a single connected strategy, WCG Study Accelerator leverages operational intelligence and real-time insights to help you avoid risk, reduce inefficiencies, and compress trial timelines by up to 20%. Don't just run your trials, accelerate them. Learn more at wcgclinical.com/study-accelerator.
Well, perfect timing, Jenna, because as we know, the updated ICH E6 R3, which everyone is probably familiar with by this time, are guidelines that are emphasizing quality by design and risk-based quality management. Sometimes what we find is quality by design and risk-based quality management can seem a little hard to put your finger on that pulse. But what we see sites may apply these principles on a day-to-day basis in a couple different ways. One of those ways may be that they're working to identify critical to quality factors early. So they're collaborating with the sponsor to ensure they align on the risk and mitigation tactic for that study by really focusing on what truly impacts the participant safety, our data integrity and compliance for that trial. We also see an adoption of risk proportionate oversight from the site perspective. And so our sites really can scale their internal monitoring and processes to the actual risk for a given study and for a given site. So they may have multiple subsites or different PIs that are operating under that. And there may be different risks, but based off of the operational model. And then also ensuring those actions really are value added. That's a big piece of the adoption of risk proportionate oversight. We also see embedding data governance, which has been a really hot topic with the release of R3, especially for sites, since there's a lot of additional components there to consider. And that strengthens our support and management of the critical data for the study. So ensuring that our audit trails and system validations are in place, maintained, and periodically reviewed, even from that site perspective and where we're collecting that data. So what is the true source? How are we managing it? What's the chain of custody for data in a study? I would finally just add the umbrella of proportionality. So this is a little different than the proportionate oversight we talked about. But proportionality is really about applying a fit-for-purpose approach to reduce the burden while ensuring we're safeguarding our quality. We're driving focus on what really matters across all of the trial activities. And we're seeing our sites really embed and embrace proportionality, especially with that confidence of working with a sponsor to determine what are those critical quality factors for this study and how can we support each other to deliver a successful trial.
What a great list of solutions that listeners can take away from this and really focus on potentially implementing. And these principles show how sites can manage complexity with a really structured approach. And it's great to have guidelines. It's great to have processes, what have you. But we really know that at the core of business, culture really drives the outcome. And so when we're looking at sites building infrastructure, we can mention technology and SOPs, but it's truly about people and process and making sure that we're serving patients. So how do you think that sites can foster a culture of quality and continuous improvement, regardless of their size?
Yeah, and that is something that really we have to take into consideration, the strategy around what your infrastructure is for your site, the maturity, what maturity even looks like and means to your site. And having those goals in mind is really instrumental in achieving success here. So for building a site infrastructure, we know it goes beyond just technology and SOPs, as you mentioned. It's truly about our people and our processes. So we're fostering a culture of quality and continuous improvement, which really can build a strong foundation for the rest of maturity to follow. Some of those elements that we think about are really starting with that strong quality culture. So empowering everyone within the organization to speak up, fix issues, have a solution mindset, and work towards shared goals. Also making sure our leadership exemplify a quality first mindset and that we provide resources to enable that culture to be successful. Additionally, of course, when we think about the infrastructure to site, we always think about the policies and procedures. So mapping out processes before writing procedures is really helpful to identify where are the bottlenecks, where are the opportunities where things could go wrong. We're always going to aim for zero defect, but there will be, of course, problems that occur. And so being able to map that out really will help proactively mitigate any risks that could occur. And some of those may be using templates. And SOPs really is that foundation, and then tailor them to your site-specific needs as well. In addition to that, prioritizing training is going to be critical to building that maturity. So ensuring everyone is qualified by training and experience, which we see called out in ICG 6R3, and all the regulations by different regulatory authorities within the world. We also see an investment in ongoing learning and clarifying roles and responsibilities as a key component of maturity. With that will come an embracement of risk management, again, also called out in ICG 6R3 and something we talked about earlier, but identify and really analyze and address any of those risks before they become problems. So part of that mapping process could be a piece of that risk management. There's many other components of risk management and what that may look like. We want to embed our risk management in our procedures. And then we also want to monitor for changes. If things change within our site, and how we're operating. So we want to monitor for that and adjust accordingly. We also want to make sure we're managing any issues or corrective and preventative actions that we may have. We have a really strong process to spot and fix those issues quickly and investigate those root causes. That's a key component, is to really know the true root cause. And then we can implement corrective and preventative actions accordingly and monitoring their effectiveness really throughout that continuum. And then with all of that in mind, knowledge management and continuous improvement continue to drive the maturity forward. Capturing our lessons learned within an organization, sharing that across silos or departments that you may have, and using really truly meaningful metrics to drive improvement within your organization. So have those goals in mind and drive towards them and put processes in place that allow you to do that. And then also just making sure we're transferring knowledge during staffing changes. We know that people, we want them to grow. So we want our people to grow. We know that they may move on from our organizations. And with that, a big piece is transferring the knowledge that is gained so that we can truly effectively continue to mature as an organization. Also, I'm just going to add this in. It's not probably a common way to think about maturity, but I think from a site perspective, engaging your community is also a critical piece here. So involve your local population and trial participants as stakeholders, building that trust and ensuring research reflects really your community needs. That drives passion and purpose within your organization and can make a huge impact.
I love all of the points you made, but the ones that really stuck out to me were the solution mindset, speak up culture, empowerment, because that's what's really going to be the catalyst for change and really inspire innovation. And also engaging your community, because you really need to engage those stakeholders because they're going to perhaps know what's best and know what's unique to each site to really empower one another to drive forward all of the different things that we're talking about. And those elements you described really highlight how infrastructure is about more than system. It's about that communication, whether it's upstream or downstream. And when it comes to that knowledge sharing, cultivating maturity at every single level, regardless of where you are within an organization. And so with that, when it comes to operational maturity, what do you think are some actionable approaches for sites to strengthen these areas and continue to enhance their resilience within this ever-changing landscape?
Yeah, I think really to enhance operational maturity and resilience within an organization, there may be several different actionable approaches that could be taken. And these are just a few from my experience. There's obviously many more that could be built off of this, but one of those key starting points would be, again, that ongoing training. So regularly updating your training to reflect our new procedures, our technology, and our regulatory requirements. Our regulatory landscape at the moment is changing rapidly. So keeping a pulse on that is critical, but also making sure you're giving the tools to your people to be successful at your site in the activities that they're doing. And then knowledge sharing, we talked a little bit about this in the last component, but really creating those forums for sharing those lessons learned and best practices across your site. You have experts at your site, utilize them, share that information. It's also a great way to build camaraderie across the organization. As we talked about, community engagement as well. So making sure we're educating and involving that local community and participants for fostering trust. And we're also showing relevance of our trials is going to help build that resilience and maturity within your organization. And reducing any of those single points of failure we may have. We want to cross-train our staff and document processes to ensure continuity during any of those transitions as well. And then consider partnership. Partnering has become a thing that a lot of organizations and sites are doing to support with that administrative and startup services, which also can provide resilience for your organization with any fluctuating volumes you may have, as well as support through consultation and even industry benchmarking knowledge sharing. So all of those are ways that you can help build in resilience and maturity within your organization.
The last piece of your response is really speaking my language, since I am working within benchmarking on a day-to-day basis and are happy to supply any metrics that are going to help sites improve. And I know we're talking about sites, but they're really not the only players in the game. As you said earlier in our conversation, it truly takes a village. And so with that, sites can't do it alone. And as we're asking and seeing sites take on more responsibility and advocate for operational feasibility and streamlined trials, I think it raises a really important question, and perhaps we need to address the elephant in the room. What should sponsor and CROs do differently to better support research sites?
Yeah, this is a critical question. And I think we have a lot of things within our ecosystem of clinical trials that really try to drive these solutions, but we have not seen the catch-all yet. That's really the most successful here. It takes just people talking to people, collaboration between our sponsors, our CROs, and our sites to drive change within our industry. And our industry is slow to change for sure. But our sponsors and CROs can better support our research sites by prioritizing integrated technology and support. So providing them with user-friendly integrated platforms and robust technical support will be critical. They can also support through streamlining protocols. So eliminating any of those non-core procedures we talked about, which adds burden. And site burden is actually called out throughout ICG 6R3 as a piece that we need to keep in mind. So we want to focus on those primary endpoints to reduce any of that burden that we can. We also want to think about quality by design. And quality by design has really been revolutionized by technology and large data sets, from the use of previous trials and frameworks to guide trial success and reduction in overall amendments, especially those avoidable amendments. For example, there are many technologies out there that can support with this. WCG has the ClinSphere Trial Intellects resource, which takes history and internal expertise and turns it into knowledge to fuel building better trials. And that can be a key component to really support our sites before we even get into the site activation process. Also, transparency and collaboration. So making sure that our sponsors and CROs are involving our sites early in protocol design, not just our key opinion leaders, but really the individuals doing the day-to-day work, operationalizing that work, and connecting with our participants, and maintaining open communication about any changes. In the recent protocol amendment workshop that we mentioned earlier, it included over 100 industry leaders. And a key theme, again, of that was communication with protocol amendments and how that can truly create burden and impact to the site. So just opening that communication can really make a huge difference. And then I would finally here, operational feasibility. So from our sponsor and CRO perspective, we want to respect the site feedback. We know each site's unique, which can be a challenge, but also a great opportunity to share those practices across sites that you're working with as a sponsor and CRO, and share the data as well to help really foster continuous improvement. That also will impact operational capacity and feasibility strains that typically occur at sites. And our sponsors and CROs should be finding ways to support that, again, to relieve any burden that's occurring at the site or PI level and allow us to be as successful as possible in delivering trials that are showing positive results and impacting our participant populations.
It all comes back to collaboration, transparency, and communication, making sure that the site voice is really heard. And I love everything you hit on as far as protocol development as well, to really be looking back at the history and ensuring that we are innovating and making sure that we're making those improvements. And so clearly, sponsors and CROs, their support is essential in making trials more manageable. And now that we're maybe perhaps looking ahead, how do you think clinical research sites turn this inevitable complexity into an opportunity for that innovation as well as meaningful growth at their organization?
Yeah, I think this is going to connection again between all of our stakeholders, but we'll focus on sites here specifically. I think our clinical research sites can turn the inevitable complexity into opportunities for innovation and meaningful growth through a couple different tactics. The first would be embracing, of course, quality by design and risk-based quality management. So we know from data that's been available that our sites kind of lag behind on adopting quality by design and risk-based quality management when compared to CRO and sponsor counterparts. And there's good reason for that. So we want to make sure our sites are using proven frameworks to focus on what matters most and drive continuous improvement within their organizations. Also investing in our people and our processes. So building resilient infrastructure that's really centered on our mission as a specific site or organization, our people, and quality. We can also think about leveraging data and technology thoughtfully. So you can adopt technology that adds value and supports your core objectives. We know from our recent WCG AI benchmarking report that is now publicly available that most sites are in the early implementation stage, with about 39% of them implementing AI. And that's up about 20% when we look at sponsors and CROs from that number. So for most sites, large capital really is not available to invest in AI or technology at the level of their industry counterparts, again, like sponsors and CROs. But starting small and finding use cases within the organization to gain traction and drive efficiencies to leverage that data can really provide insights and operational efficiencies from a long perspective. Additionally, we can think about fostering collaboration, so engaging with our sponsors and CROs and the community to co-create solutions and drive innovation within our space. We cannot work in a silo. Research really does have to be a team effort with all of the different stakeholders that are engaged. And then in short, a complexity is going to be inevitable, but unnecessary burden is not. And by fostering a culture of quality, advocating for operational feasibility, and leveraging our modern frameworks, sites can not only manage complexity, but they can transform it into a catalyst for excellence and innovation within their organization.
I love thinking about how sites can be that catalyst for change to really accelerate impact for patients and just move the needle as far as how we're looking at how research is conducted. So as we've heard today, complexity, it is not going away anytime soon. But I feel as though Trevor really illustrated how sites are showing true maturity and operational excellence in how they're strategizing to handle it. And so whether we learned about streamlining protocols, embracing quality by design, and building cultures of resilience, I feel as though it's exemplified that we're looking at how they're turning challenges into true opportunities. And so while the landscape continues to evolve, sites are proving that instead of slowing progress, complexity can be that catalyst for innovation and for growth. Before we wrap up, I just want to thank you, Trevor, for joining me today and sharing all of your expertise and insights on this episode of WCG Talks Trials. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. If you have any questions or would like to dive into more insights from the WCG 2026 Trends and Insights Report, you can visit wcgclinical.com/insights. And please don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on your favorite listening platforms, whether that's Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, so you never miss an episode of WCG Talks Trials. We hope you found this episode insightful and that you'll join us for future episodes of WCG Talks Trials. Bye for now.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of WCG Talks Trials. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on your preferred listening platform as we continue to explore different areas of the clinical research industry. As always, we encourage you to join in the conversation. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for future topics you'd like to hear on the show by visiting us at wcgclinical.com/podcast. We're here to serve as a trusted resource as we work to improve lives and accelerate clinical research together.